finished test yesterday, where Rebbe's explained the unique nature of Torah, the unique nature of the Lishma of Torah. The Torah Lishma brings about a yichud of Elyon v'tachtin in a more powerful way than anything else. And the last lines, we have to understand all this. Mizgala, it's Mizgala lamata. I'll just start 4 lines up. This affects the person. The greatest revelation of the Bilti Gvul, the Torah, is that it can be learned down here and it still stays in it remains the Torah that it is above, so to speak, even though it comes down here and is learned by someone down here in Gvul, someone down here in Tachton, and yet the Torah is the Torah. We'll talk about that in a second. This line is the line that requires explanation. That which the Torah is Bilti Gvul, it's unlimited, it's not only mitzad the Torah itself in terms of its own level of reality. Meaning, the essential reality of the Torah is that it's unlimited. But when it comes down into Eilam Hazeh, it has to limit itself in order to be expressed in Eilam Hazeh, etc. No. The Torah that expresses itself in Eilam Hazeh is just as unlimited as the Torah in its source. We'll see what that means. We talked about it very, very quickly at the end of Shir yesterday. Footnote 75 helps, but we'll need a little bit of Hagdama. The bli gvul of Torah is also drawn down lamata. And we see that by virtue of the fact that even though there's a level of Torah that's very powerfully transcendent of limitation, and that's the level of Agisa B'Yom and B'Layla, but even there's a certain state of limitation. Then there's a level beyond that where the person learns Torah, and it might be that they get completely and totally beyond space, beyond time, ad kedei kach, that the only Metzias for them is Torah, which we talked about. But again, it's a very, very subtle point. And that's the level of Torah that's beyond halacha. Ela shinim sheches gam lamata, v'gam b'hamshachosa lamata, nirgash begilui abilti gvul sheba. Now that's a very interesting thing, that it's nirgash begilui, the unlimited nature of Torah. So now a person down here, the simple pshat in that is a person down here can appreciate the fact that even though he's learning Torah within the context of finite reality, anybody with any sensitivity whatsoever realizes that ultimately this is something beyond the Gvul. This is the Chochmah of the Eibishter, the Ratzon of the Eibishter, and it never stops being the Chochmah of the Eibishter and the Ratzon of the Eibishter. It never stops being that unlimited state of reality. Right? Now, anybody with any sensitivity whatsoever will be aware of that. So that's even nirgash begilui lamata. When you define Torah, how do you define Torah? Not simply chachmaschem ubinaschem leini kol ha'amim. That's also true. But it's beyond that. Now, a person can certainly appreciate that in Torah shebechsav. A person who learns Torah Shebal Peh might not appreciate that unless he learns about it. He might think Torah Shebal Peh is just a bunch of smart guys sitting around and talking, right? Which is also true, but it's obviously a lot more than that. But there's some people who never get that. The Torah Shebal Peh just they never chop the kedusha of it. How do we chop the kedusha of it? Because we're taught about the kedusha of it. We're opened up to the kedusha and sensitized to the kedusha of it. But it might be theoretically that doesn't happen to me. Right? Because no one told me. So that's when the Rebbe says here it's nirgash begilui. That's very interesting. Shigam limud Torah shel adam hu ba'ofen de bilti gvul. So then the limud Torah of the person can be bilti gvul, and that's the limud Torah of the Rogatchover. That's the limud Torah of the Rebbe at the time of the Rebbetzin. Right? I mean, it's always that, but we saw it begalui. That's the limud Torah of those Chassidim of the Mitler Rebbe. That's the limud Torah of the story in the Gemara and Kedushin. Oin Soishani. So you see Begilui. Oh, so now, Baruch Hashem, we've learned this. We learned it in Basi Lagani Tavshin Chav Daled. as we said when we learned Chav Dalet, so Chav Beis, Chav Gimmel, Chav Dalet deal with the idea of Or Ein Sof L'mayla Ad Ein Kates U'Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis, and those three chapters deal with the Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis in order to understand L'mayla Ad Ein Kates, which is next year. That's where we're going, right? Okay, hopefully we'll hear it from the Rebbe himself, and we'll see how it all works out, right? But that's where we're going in Chav Hei, in Basi Lagani. Okay. So what did we learn? We learned something quite fascinating about Or Ein Sof. And why are we talking about Or? Because what's Torah? Torah Or. Ner mitzvah Torah Or. And Torah is always compared to Or. But there's two different levels of Or. Right? We talked about this a little bit yesterday at the end of Shir, but we have to talk about it more in order to understand what the Rebbe is saying here. It's very difficult to understand what the Rebbe is saying. It's not simple. It's very dark. It's very subtle. There's a level of Or. Well, I tell you what, let's read footnote 75 first. Al derech hachiluk shebeina ein sof shebatzilus la'ein sof shelamayla mi'atzilus. Atzilus is an elam. The Friedrich Rebbe says is beferish in Basiligani Tafshin Yud that Atzilus afal pisha elam is ein sof, even though it's one of the worlds of ein sof, still there's what's there. There's a certain level of the revelation of Gvul, what's revealed there. Spheres, but what each sphere is ein sof. Each sphere is an infinite expression of that particular. It's when we talk about the chesed in Atzilus, talking about chesed of the Eibishter. The chesed of the Eibishter is infinite. It's not finite chesed. It's infinite chesed. It's chesed, but it's infinite chesed. So there's this tension in Eilam Atzilus. That's what we always talk about Eilam Atzilus as a tzir. It's like a hinge. What is it? Ein sof or Eilam? Right? Is it the Eibishter or is it a world? Well, it's both. It's a world of Eibishter. Right? And that's exactly what the Atzilus is. So that the mashal that we use is the ice cup. It's H2O, but it's the Eibishter. It's all H2O. There's a gvul, so to speak. There's a cup, but it's H2O. It's all H2O. It's all him. But there's a limitation of Atzilus. That's what Rabbi explains. That which it's the Or of Atzilus is Ein Sof. U'Batzilus Gufa. It's only in Atzilus. There's no revelation of the Or of Atzilus in Eilam Abriya. In Eilam Abriya, it's the Or of Eilam Abriya. It's a different level of Or. It's a different animal, so to speak. It's a completely different state of reality. Right? Where's Atzilus? In Atzilus. And if Atzilus is Yared Lamata, what does it cease to be? Atzilus, not Atzilus anymore. Whatever that reality is, it's not what it was. It's not like its source. What? In its source, is it Ein Sof? Absolutely, 100%. But once that state comes into a state of Helim, so it ceases to be it. Once there's a Helim of Atzilus, where's a Helim of Atzilus? Another place called Bria. Right? So then there's no revelation of the reality called Atzilus. So then it ceases to be. It's that level of light is no longer in existence in this place. It's a new level of light, a new reality, a new level of godly energy. That's Atzilus. What about our Ein Sof L'mayla mi'Atzilus? We'll call it Sove, but the Rebbe doesn't use that word here, so we won't. Right? Or Ein Sof L'mayla mi'Atzilus. What do we know about that? Or Ein Sof L'mayla ad Ein Kates U'Lamata ad Ein Tachlis. And that the Rebbe explained to us in Chav Dalet. What does that mean? That the Or is Nimshach Lamata and stays in its Ein Sofiyut completely and totally. And it's not in a state of Helim, it's in a state of absolute Gilui. The fact that you and I can't see that light, that's not a function of the light, that's a function of you and I. The light mitzad itself is in a state of absolute Gilui. I just can't see it. Right? Even in Gashmias, right, there's levels of light that you and I don't see. It's not that they're not here, right? Gamma rays and X-rays and all those rays. Okay, so fine. So someone's shooting gamma rays into a room, shooting X-rays into a room. Okay, so I can't see them. Well, I have a machine that can. Okay, fine. That machine's very useful. Right? Okay. Just don't stand in front of it too much or you'll start to glow in the dark. But right, X-rays are a level of light that the human eye can't see. That doesn't mean that level of light isn't in a state of Gilui. It's in a state of Gilui. It's just that I'm not a Kli for that state of Gilui. Okay. So the Ein Sof, Lamata, Lamata, Adin Tachlis, this year's Basi Lagani, that level of light is in a state of Gilui, Lamata, Mamish. But the fact that I can't see it is a function in me, it's not a function in it. Torah is that. Torah is that level of R. That level of R that's Nimshach Lamata is in a state of Gilui in all of its glory, Lamata, there's no Helim. I might not see all of that. That's a function of me. But interestingly enough, the Chiddush that the Rebbe told us is the Torah can be pale on you and I, so we actually can be sensitive to that. I can learn a Maimer Chassidus about what it is. There is a Maimer. I've never learned the Maimer. I just heard about it. I mean, I was learning with someone. They mentioned the Maimer. I don't even know what level, what volume in Melukat, but that's not a problem these days because you just pick up Melukat, the one that has them all in it, and you look. There's a mimer in Vayigash. It's in Melukat where the Rebbe explains this at greater length. That's the Maramukim for this part of this mimer at greater length. So exactly where it is, I meant, if I'd had time this morning, if I hadn't walked out of my house without my wallet, so I had to miss the bus because I got halfway to the bus and realized it was going to be hard to pay for the bus. So I had to go back to my house. And of course, obviously that means I missed that bus and took a next bus. And that means I was 10 minutes late and that's annoying. So I did not take any of my time to go look up which volume in Vayigash, which volume in Melukat it is. But it's easy enough to find, because if you find the 4-volume Melukat, just look up where Parshas Vayigash is, and they'll all be listed there. And there's probably only one mimer in Melukat that's called Vayigash Mamish. I don't see him after the morning, but you do. After this class, I don't see him. Okay. So that's Torah. Torah is that level of So let's keep reading. Mamish. Drawn down onto all Ishtash. Now the Marmakim the Rebbe gives is some of them, which is the Marmakim the Rebbe gives in the Chavtal. Okay. So that's the nature of Torah. So what do we learn? We learn that there's a bli gvul of Torah that is beyond the bli gvul of mitzvahs. And that bli gvul brings about the greatest chibur of Elyon and Tachton. Why? Because I'm in the Tachton, and yet there's a revelation of Elyon that's completely unadulterated while I remain down here in the Tachton. Okay, so what's that got to do with Purim? Now we're going to connect it to Purim, because we're saying that that's what Torah is. Torah is that level of reality that brings about the greatest unity of Elyon and Tachton. And what's necessary for that Torah to enter into the world completely is Mesiras Nefesh B'Feil, not Mesiras Nefesh B'Koyach, which does make sense now, right? Because what's the difference between Mesiras Nefesh B'Koyach, just before we see it inside? How would you describe? What's the difference between Mesiras Nefesh B'Koyach and Mesiras Nefesh B'Foil? And don't tell me potential and actual, because all you did was translate, and that's not called explaining. What would be the difference relative to the person? Where is Mesiras Nefesh B'Koyach happening in the person, so to speak? And where, and you have to think about it in the context of this mind, and where is Mesiras Nefesh B'Foil happening in the person, so to speak? Even though they both come from the same place. Obviously, they're coming from Yeshiva Nefesh. What are we trying to be meyached? What are we trying to unite? Elyon and Tachton. Okay. So that means what? It has to be experienced as Elyon, where? Where does whatever it is that I'm talking about, it has to remain Elyon and yet still be experienced and revealed where? In Tachton. And that's the whole idea. Right? If the alien is mevatel the tachta, and that's not the idea. If the alien has to be mevatel itself, mitzamtzem itself, in order to be revealed in the tachta, that's not the idea. I want unadulterated alien in tachta. Okay. And every time the Rebbe talked about this, when he talked about the three different levels of performance of mitzvahs, the first two, one was mitzad the tachta, and one was mitzad the alien. Then there was a level that was beyond both and brought about the unity of both. Okay. So what might be the limitation of something? That it might be only mitzad one level and not another. Okay, so if I want to bring down the highest level of my connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where do I want to bring it down to in order to express the greatest connection? In the context of this mimer. Tachton. Okay. Mesiras nefesh b'keach. What's the emphasis? No. Other Rabbi. Elyon, my neshama. My neshama is willing to give up his life. Am I asked me, is my goof involved yet? No. My neshama is making a decision that if I have to give up my goof, I will, but I don't. It's all coming from my connection to the Eibishter mitzad my Elyon. Mesiras nefesh b'feil. Who's now all of a sudden involved actually? My goof. But we're going to have to explain. But wait a minute, hold on a second. That's all very nice and good. But the shorish of Mesiras nefesh is still my alien. Still my neshama. So then, what's the difference? Okay, so we'll have to see. But it's dafka Mesiras nefesh beguf that I'm bringing that level of the revelation down into tachton mamish. And I'm not being mevatel the tachton. Other Rabba though. Now, it might be the tachton has to be mevatel itself because that's what Mesiras nefesh is, okay? But that the idea is that it's happening in my goof. Okay, let's see. Al pi kol anal yesh leimer. Based on everything we've said, you can explain. Hatam al zeh, the reason, shegemar kabbalas Torah, that the completion of the acceptance of the Torah, Vekiblu hayehudim, tali b'Mesiras nefesh. It's dependent on Mesiras nefesh. And now we mean Mesiras nefesh b'feil and not Mesiras nefesh b'koyach. It was already asked the question. We already had Mesiras nefesh b'koyach about the Torah, and that was called nasa v'nishma. Ki achibur d'elyonim v'tachtenim, the ultimate unity of elyon and tachtein, hu al yedei bittul hagedarim v'metzias de'elyon v'tachtein, is through the bittul of the definition of elyon and not. And the existence of Elyon and Tachton. Now, not the bittul mitzad, the fact that Tachton ceases to be, but it's through the revelation of a level that's beyond both Elyon and Tachton. V'lochen, b'chdei sh'tiyah shleimus d'kabbalas Torah, in order that there should be a complete acceptance of the Torah, hutzrach liyas, there has to be the level of bittul of Mesiras nefesh. Why? Let's see. Even though at the time of Matan Torah, when we said Nasiv and Nishma, Kiblu Aleim, when we said Nasiv and Nishma, what do we say? We're willing to die. That's what we said. Whatever is there, we'll do. Whatever is there, we're going to do. We didn't hear about it yet, but whatever is there, we're going to do. And what the Mesiras nefesh of that is we'll do that no matter what. It doesn't matter. Makes sense. Doesn't make sense. So what's that? That's called Mesiras nefesh. Beyond tam v'das. This isn't a function of making sense. If it makes sense to me, I do it. If it doesn't make sense, I don't do it. It doesn't speak to me. Okay, so that's very nice. That doesn't mean the person doesn't do all sorts of good things in their life. But if it's not a level beyond tam v'das, so then it's got nothing to do with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's got to do with me. What am I serving? My own intellect. It happens to be that I'm lucky. My intellect agrees with God's intellect in most circumstances. So I do what God says. I'm lucky. There's all sorts of people whose intellect disagrees with God everywhere. Okay, so they're unlucky, so they don't do what God says. But both of them are the same. There's no difference between those two people. Obviously, one's behavior is better than the other's behavior, but mitzad their panemius, they're both in exactly the same place. What's guiding their behavior? Their own intellect. What I decide is reasonable, that's what I do. And if I don't think it's reasonable, I can't relate to it, so I don't do it. Okay? That's me. I'm serving myself. It happens to be that some people are lucky, and serving themselves means they serve God also. Meaning they're not really serving God, but they do what God wants. Okay? What's Mesiras nefesh? Mesiras nefesh is getting completely beyond that. L'mayla mitam v'das. That's nasa v'nishma. I'm going to do it. I understand it. I don't understand it. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense. It speaks to me. It doesn't speak to me. What does it make? Nasa. Then v'nishma. But now my Venishma is part of the bittul of Vanasa. Why am I trying to understand it? I'm trying to understand it, so I'll do it. I'm trying to understand it because you want me to understand it. And if you didn't want me to understand it, say this. I would, I wouldn't. Who knows? I don't know. To figure it out. Right? But why am I trying to understand this? Because you want me to understand it. You gave me Torah, and you gave me Torah to learn Torah also, not just do mitzvahs. You also gave me Torah to learn Torah. So I'm going to try to understand what I'm doing. I certainly have to understand it in order to do it, okay? But that's not the level of understanding of Nasa v'Nishma. Nasa v'Nishma is I'm going to learn Torah, the Nishma. I'm going to try to understand what I'm doing. Mitzad the doing, but also mitzad the just reality of Torah. I'm going to try to understand it as best I can. But that's bottled to the Nasa. And that's why you got two crowns. Why do we get a second crown? Why do you get a crown for Nishma? Nishma is Seichel. Nasa is Bittul L'mayla Mina Seichel, so I get a crown, something beyond my head, beyond Seichel. But Nishma is Seichel. Why do I get a crown for Seichel? Seichel's not crown, Seichel's head. It's not the above the head, it's the head. Why do I get a crown for not Nishma? Because my Nishma is also Bittul. Nishma is also bottled to the Nasa. Why are you doing Nishma? Because God said so. Or because it's there, right? The second level of those two levels, right? Because the level of Elyon, because God said so, or also the level beyond Elyon, so it's just there. Right? It's Elokus, so why wouldn't I learn it? I don't understand. What am I going to learn? The doc's not here, but I mean, you can memorize batting averages. Right, okay. People like using their seichel, right? So what do kids use their seichel for? So they might memorize the box score, like they'll read the box score. And they're still bored. They finished reading it. They're still bored. So they like keep reading it. So they, let's see, and they'll memorize who's hitting what. Right? Why? Well, because people have intellect and they like to use it. So children will use it on relatively stupid things, and adults will use it on less stupid things. I mean, it might be just as stupid in relative to who they are, okay? But I mean, they might also do exactly the same thing and memorize box scores, but hopefully not. Right, okay. Or what? Use my intellect to learn Torah because there's a Torah out there and it's God, so why wouldn't I want to do that? And that level of Talmud Torah is that's the ultimate in Talmud Torah. Not mitzad expressing my intellect, mitzad the fact that I have this thing called intellect and I'm using it to connect to the Eibishter. Not to connect because I want to connect. I'm using it to connect to the Eibishter because the Eibishter is the Eibishter. I just want to learn his Torah. Even at the time of Matan Torah, which is the bittul of Mesiras Nefesh. So why wasn't that good enough? They accepted upon themselves to do everything that was commanded in the Torah. That's why Nasa v'Nishma is Mesiras Nefesh, because l'mayla mitam vadas. Okay. So then why isn't that enough? As long as it's only potential, mitzad the neshama. Then it's mitzad the neshama. It's mitzad the Elyon. It doesn't mean it's that good. It's amazing. It's incredible. The whole world is different because Am Yisrael had the bittul of the neshama to reach the level of Mesiras Nefesh b'koyach and Matan Torah and say Nasa v'Nishma. If we hadn't done that, who knows? Would there still be a world? On that? Not according to Chazal, there wouldn't be a world. If we didn't accept the Torah, there wouldn't have been a world. Right? The Eibishter said, okay, enough. That's a nice idea. Boom. End of world. What does the Eibishter do before he creates a world? There's no before, there's no after. He doesn't need us to worry. He has what to do. It hasn't penetrated to our goof yet. Not that it wouldn't penetrate to our goof if push came to shove. Oh, when did push come to shove? Purim. So what did we see? Oh, they really did accept the Torah, didn't they? They really have, haven't they? It's exactly the point. Right? The cave in Shabbitel, Shal Al Yadoi Nasa Chibur Del Yoni V'Tachteinim. And since this level of bittul, which brings about the chibur of Elyon and V'tachton, because you and I have to come to a place in our own avodah, especially in our, and where can we do this in the context of learning Torah? We have to come to a place where there's a bittul of Elyon and Tachton, and so there's a revelation of a Metzias, bilti mubelis, a completely unlimited Metzias. And what will that allow for? How will that be revealed? A person can learn Torah in an ofen of bilti gvul. A regular person, Chassidim at the middle of Rebbe, getting so involved in an inyan of Torah that they don't even notice where they walked into. Why? Because what was happening? There's only one thing happening, the Torah. There's the only thing happening. Rabbi Kaplan once, I remember, he was talking about this in the Farbrengen long, long ago. Maybe he's talked about it to you guys 15 times since. I don't remember. I don't hear him Farbrengen very often. But I remember long ago sitting in Mayanot, and he was Farbrengen, he said something very, very captivating. That the only time in his life that he ever experienced the idea of there being only one reality and absolutely nothing else exists, there's only one thing going on and there's no other noise, even in the most subtle way. And see, the example he brought was in a Farbrengen by the Rebbe, where the Rebbe is ma'oded the niggin, and wants you to sing the niggin with more koyach. The only thing that exists in life is singing that niggin with more koyach. There's nothing else that exists. Your body doesn't exist, your neshama doesn't exist, the person next to you doesn't exist, the room doesn't exist, nothing exists except that niggin. And the desire of the Rebbe that niggin should be sung more. And you see it in Farbrengen, but Muchash, you see they're singing the Gunim, and all of a sudden the Rebbe goes like this, and the Rebbe, and once, okay, it'll pick up. Right, but then when the Rebbe does that 5 times, the roof is coming off the place. Everybody in there, I don't know everybody, kimat everybody in there. What's the only thing that's happening in their life at that moment? There is nothing else. That nigga. That's a very powerful experience. And Taka, when he described it, so I remember that experience being a powerful experience. I can't say that I experienced that when I'm sitting and learning at Taisvis. I should, right? Not that I shouldn't, right? If you get to the point in that Taisvis that the only thing that exists right now is pshat in this Taisvis, and that's something that probably we have experienced at some point in our lives to learn something, and you're just like, the only thing that exists right now is getting pshat in this line. There isn't anything else. There's not the cup of coffee. There's not there's a chavrusa, beseder, but the chavrusa is just part of that too, right? Okay. And it's not about me getting it so I'll feel better about myself and realize that, I made progress, and the Baal Tshuva always, and it's a perfectly reasonable hang up, so to speak. I mean, it's not, right, is constantly measuring his progress. Like, how much better am I at this now? Okay, I get that. I mean, obviously you get that. I mean, the person's trying to learn how to do something. So, of course, you're going to all of a sudden go, wow, that's pretty cool. I couldn't do that last month. All of a sudden, I just did something that I always had a hard time doing, and now I can. Oh, Baruch Hashem, this hard work is paying off. Okay, so that's normal and reasonable. But at that moment, I'm not touching the essence of the Torah. Right? That's getting in the way. That's not a terrible thing and an unusual thing. Okay, but at that particular moment, I'm not completely focused on the Torah. But what about if I'm in the middle of that sugya and the only thing that matters is trying to figure out how are they learning pshat in this pasuk? And you look up the pasuk, and you look back in the Gemara, and then you look up the pasuk again, and then you look at Rashi in the pasuk, and you just the only thing you care about is what's pshat, and what is Chazal saying pshat in that pasuk is. Okay, that's learning Torah. It's when Torah is the only thing. And if all of a sudden, you noticed that the room had been moved somewhere else, how'd we get here? Right? Taka, we were so involved in the sugi, you didn't even notice. Right? That can happen. Baruch Hashem. What is that? So that's a level of yichud of Elyon and Tachton, and a level that both the Elyon and the Tachton are bottled, because what are you connecting to? Something beyond both, the Torah. Mitzad the Torah, just mitzad the Torah, not mitzad me understanding it, not that this piece of Torah has to be understood. Right? That's very real. That's real Talmud Torah. And I don't know whether when I get it, I'll slap high five. You know, with the chavrusa. It drives me crazy when chavrusa slap high five. I mean, I get it. I'm an idiot, right? Okay. But I mean, you know, there's another line waiting. Just go. You know? Okay, it was hard work for sure. And you might even want to say that, you might even say that you know, I want to appreciate, you know, the hard work that went into this. Okay. The Rebbe at his best, you know, his most Rebbe. Yeah, the story of Rabbi Kaplan is the ultimate story, right, of the Rebbe. I remember the first video that came out with Jim, when Jim started making videos. The first video that came out with was called Challenge. What was it all about? I was never satisfied. Right? Because that's, what am I satisfied about? What exactly? Okay, say I did something, I get it. And not that obviously it's normal to be, oh, Baruch Hashem, that was really hard work and I'm really happy that I accomplished that, and that's good. And that might also be an impetus to do it again. Okay, Seder, we get all that. That's all mitzvah tachta, right? But okay, I get that. But so often, the story of Rabbi Kaplan, the Rebbe came up with an idea called Chabad house, right? And a new idea, a place that's Jewish that a person can walk into, even if they aren't necessarily interested in davening. Amazing idea. It's not a shul. No one goes to shul. I mean, they might go to shul to learn, but no one goes to shul just, you know, to have a cup of coffee. No, open up something where someone might walk in and just have a piece of cake and a cup of coffee and say hello to another Jew. Okay. And it's not called the Jewish Community Center. Right? It's like really Jewish. Okay. Baruch Hashem. It's a nice thing. Called the Chabad house. So, Rabbi Kaplan opened what is basically the first Chabad house in Los Angeles, and came to the Rebbe with the key, and gave the Rebbe the key to the Chabad house. And said to the Rebbe, "This is the key of the Chabad house." What was the Rebbe's answer? Which one? Which Chabad house? What do you mean? There's only one. I mean, there's only one. So Rabbi Kaplan, being Rabbi Kaplan, didn't say anything. He just walked out of the room, went back to LA, and worked on opening another one. He realized, okay, I'm not getting a pat on the back. I'm not getting a certificate here. Nothing's happening. There's just another one to open. And there's an amazing story, Chabad of Malibu. How did it come about? It's a very, very successful Chabad house. Unbelievably successful Chabad house. One of Rabbi Kaplan's sons, I don't know which one it is running Chabad of Malibu. It's unbelievably successful. How did it start? Rabbi Kaplan came back from Gimmel Tammuz, walked into his office with his son. They came back together. He walked into his office at the Chabad house, main Chabad house in LA, and he burst into tears. Okay, now I'm back here. Now what? Well, he's burst into tears. At a certain point, he stopped crying, looked at his son, and said, "The Rebbe doesn't want tears." Gave him a $20 bill. So that's the first installment, the first donation. That's the first donation to the new Chabad house in Malibu. They drove out to Malibu and they found a place. They rented a place. And Rabbi Kaplan said there'll be a minyan here this Shabbos. They got 10 bachrim to go to Malibu and have a minyan for Shabbos. They've had a minyan for Shabbos ever since. That was how that Chabad house opened up. Right? The Rebbe doesn't want us to cry. Let's go open a Chabad house. That's what they did. He was who knows how much in debt, and that's a separate issue, right? But that's what he did. Okay. It's not like he thought, I've opened enough, or whatever. But I have no idea what's going on in his head at the moment. We know the story. That's all we know. So the neshama, the Mesiras Nefesh B'Kerech is mitzad the neshama v'ein b'aguf. V'kevan shal bittul shal yadoi na'aseh chibur d'elyonim b'tachtenim. And since the ultimate bittul brings about the complete and total unity of elyon and tachton, tzarich liyos hein be'elyon v'hein b'tachton. has to be expressed both in Elyon, mitzad the neshama, but also in Tachta, mitzad the guf. Lochin hashleimus the Kabbalah Torah teluya. Therefore, the shleimus of the receiving of the Torah is dependent on Mesiras Nefesh b'feil. Ki Mesiras Nefesh b'feil hiba guf nefesh ativis. It's when the guf decides, the nefesh ativis decides, the Tachton decides. Life without Eibishter is not it. Now, I can say that conceptually. That's nafs evanishma, which is amazing. That's an incredible thing. But if it doesn't penetrate down into the goof in Maisa B'Feil, so then it's still something of Elyon. That's what the Rebbe is saying. Now the Rebbe is going to explain that in terms of the difference between Purim and Hanukkah. Even though, interesting enough, in both cases, if Jews did mitzvahs, they were put to death. So what's the difference? Hanukkah also, if you kept them, there were gezeiros against Torah and mitzvahs, and if you kept the Torah and mitzvahs, then you put to death. So I understand why wasn't it charged to the goof? And yet we make a clear distinction between Purim and Hanukkah. And Purim is the ultimate Kabbalah Torah, and not Hanukkah. And obviously it's not because Purim happened first and Hanukkah happened second, because if it was supposed to be Hanukkah and that's the ultimate Kabbalah Torah, then Hanukkah would happen first. Right? I mean, that's like a silly answer. Oh, well, Purim happened first. The Eibishter can do whatever he wants, so he can make Hanukkah happen first, if that's what has to be. But that wasn't what had to be. Purim had to be. Sometimes people forget God in all of this. So I'm sorry, I forgot one footnote relative to what we were learning. Before I say there's all a continuation of it, but the last footnote in Tess, 76, we did 75, but do 76 also. What's the greatest gilui of the built-in gvul of Torah? V'zeh adam nishar mitziyusa, the fact that a person stays in his mitziyus, b'gvul, afal pikein limud Torah shalayu l'maylam. Still his Torah is beyond Agbala. He's still gvul. He's still here. It doesn't disappear. Al-Yadezem, he's galad, yes, through that it's revealed even more. A built-in gvul the Torah. The ultimate unlimited nature of Torah. Because here's this person connecting to this completely unlimited reality, and we can understand intellectually how this is a completely unlimited reality. We can learn the fifth Perek in Tanya, we can learn Rashi on Eskola Dvar Me'ela that we learned about, right? That Limit to the Kodesh Baruch Amar says there was Dibur Echad, it's all Dibur Echad, it's all Amailami, okay, but then it comes down into the world. So when you're learning Torah, you're learning the Chachma and the Ratzon of the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and it's an unadulterated Chachma and Ratzon. Okay, I can understand that all intellectually. But what's also really astounding is that when a person's doing that and he's touching this completely transcendent place, he's still sitting in the chair, he's still taking up, he still weighs the same, he's still there. He'll get hungry if he sits there long enough. Right? Still a goof. Nothing happens. It's not that all of a sudden, when Avram Avinu learned Torah, who knows what happened? I mean, I don't know. But did he stay in the Shema of a goof? Well, who knows? Because that line of the Rebbe that's not in the Mimer that we saw in the Ksav Yad, that where the Rebbe says that Matan Torah brought about a situation of doing these things in the Shemas begufin. So what did they do before? It wasn't the Shemas begufin? Shamit is in Ein Sof. At least I'm sorry. Valderach Mavur Behemshech Tafresh Samach Vav Sham. Shamit is in Ein Sof. Is Pashtusa, the ultimate expression of the unlimited expansion and expression of the light of Ein Sof. Shebakol Makom Umeir Begilui Mamish. That it shines in every place. We call Makom. Yet still, the Eilumas they're not bottled. That's the greatest expression of the built-in gvul of the art. There's the level of the built-in gvul of the infinite that by definition is going to be mevatel the finite, because it's infinite. And then there's a level of built-in gvul that's so built-in gvul that it doesn't have to be mevatel the finite in order to be in the finite. That's the ultimate. That's Torah. Okay, let's go a little further. V'al-pi zayuvan gam b'mayla b'mesiras nefesh d'purma, b'mesiras nefesh d'Chanukah. Ki gam b'mesiras, which is a topic that's brought up in many Maimarim, obviously, because those two holidays go together. The two holidays d'Rabbanan, so to speak. Ki gam b'mesiras nefesh b'foil, hu be'ikar mitzad ha'neshama. The Rebbe is asking a very interesting question. Everybody's learned about Mesiras Nefesh. Where does Mesiras Nefesh B'Foil come from? What's it an expression of? What's it a revelation of? And we have to know the answer to this question because we've learned it so many times. Mesiras Nefesh B'Foil. Where does that come from? At least. Probably Yechidish Nefesh, right? I mean, up until Chassidus, and even through the first generations of Chassidus, Chai and Yechida were lumped together, right? But ultimately, there's a certain distinction between the two. And when we discuss Mesiras Nefesh in our generations, basically from the Rebbe Shab on for sure, then it's always Yechida Nefesh. Okay, so what's the problem with that? That's Elyon. It's the Neshama. Mesiras Nefesh is all about the Neshama. I don't say either there's a goof, but it's all about the Neshama. So how can we say that Mesiras Nefesh is the Hebrew of Elyon v'Tachton? Mesiras Nefesh is the hitgabrut of Elyon over Tachton, isn't it? Elyon is overcoming Tachton. My Neshama is overcoming my goof. Why can't I describe Mesiras Nefesh that way? Evidently, that's not pshat, because we're saying Mesiras Nefesh B'Foil is after the Hebrew of Elyon v'Tachton. Why can't I say it's the bittul of the Tachton to the Elyon? Then along comes the Elyon, it's revealed in all its glory, and the Tachton says, oh, I'm supposed to do this. I can't do anything about this. Okay. Jumps off the bridge. A powerful question. He be'ikar mitzad ha'neshama, elo shemesiras nefesh the neshama pe'elis gam ba'guf v'nefesh ha'tivis. But the mesiras nefesh affects the guf and the nefesh ha'tivis. Umikev, and since shaguf and nefesh ha'tivis, the guf and the nefesh ha'tivis, nefesh ha'bamis. But the Rebbe has interest enough in his mind. It's not referred to it once as nefesh ha'bamis. It's nefesh ha'tivis. Mitzad inyanam, in terms of their reality in Metzias, l'chein ha-gilui, the Matan Torah, the revelation of Matan Torah, achibur d'elyonim v'tachtenim shenimshach behen, that's drawn down in them, al yedei ha-bittul, the Mesiras Nefesh, shemitzad ha-neshama, as a result of the bittul of Mesiras Nefesh that comes from the neshama, hu davar noisef aleim. It's like something additional to them. It hasn't changed them. It hasn't started to define them. It's just something that happens to them because they don't have any choice. Similar to V'yata Tetzavu, when the Rebbe describes Mesiras Nefesh, right? As opposed to Kosis Lamar. Kosis Lamar is where it becomes the Metzias of the Lamata Mamish. But the Mesiras Nefesh, the Rebbe says, it's possible for a person to be Meisir Nefesh in Russia for 25 years, keep Torah and mitzvahs under the threat of death. And then when he gets to Tel Aviv, Ramat Gan, Kfar Saba, Yerushalayim, LA, or Brooklyn, you would never know. He's from. You never know he's a Mesiras Nefesh, right? I mean, you hear him talk. That's interesting. He has a Russian accent. I wonder what this guy's story is. And you ask him his story, and he tells you these unbelievable stories. You can't believe it. Wow, this guy was Mesiras Nefesh. It's incredible. This guy's a hero. You knew that? Why would you see that? If Rav Mendel walked in the room, you'd know it right away. You'd go over to him and say, whoa, who are you? Tell me your story. Okay, you wouldn't say it that way, obviously, but that's what you'd want. You'd want to hear right away what's his story, because you see it. Okay, you didn't see it in people. That's Avata Tetzava. That's what the Rebbe explains. Okay, so what was that? It was a davar neisef. It was something imposed upon them from outside, so to speak, from the situation of Golus. Okay. So why? So then, how is Purim not that? It says an amazing thing. V'zeu ha'mayla the Mesiras Nefesh the Purim al Mesiras Nefesh the Chanukah. And this is the Mayla, the Mesiras Nefesh the Purim al the Mesiras Nefesh the Purim. That's very interesting. We asked this question earlier in the Maimer. Why is it that when we talk about Purim, and the Mittler Rebbe also, the Friedrich Rebbe also talks about the shiftless of the goof of the Yidden. Why didn't we just talk about it? He says they were betachlis shiftless mitzad the neshama mitzad the goof. What do you mean tachlis shiftless mitzad the goof? Tachlis shiftless mitzad the neshama. That's the question relative to why it is that Kabbalah Satorah at Purim was greater than the Kabbalah Satorah at Matan Torah. Because they were shiftless ruchnius. They were on a low spiritual level. I mean, I'm not talking about Kabbalah Satorah. So mitzad Kabbalah Satorah, I'm talking about spirituality. Oh, but he also talks about shiftless beguf. Why? So he says something astounding. וזהו המיילה למסירת נפש בו ומסירת נפש חנוכה. שבפורים היו בתכלס הביטל והשפץ גם מצד הגוף. What does that mean? שהרי היו הפקר גמור להריגה לכל מי שירצה. The Jewish body was completely hefker. Anybody in the realm of Achashverosh who wanted to kill that body had b'shus to kill that body. The body was absolute hefker. Unfortunately, very similar to a situation about 80 years ago in Europe. Complete hefkeres. No value whatsoever. Batul ka'afredar. You want to kill a yid? It's like swatting a fly. That's what it was like then. Even though there was a date for it all, Beseder, it wasn't like they could kill them all year long. And naturally, there was no way to get out of this. But wait a minute, the Rebbe's going to deal with this immediately. The Alter Rebbe tells us that they could deal with it. They could deny their Yiddishkeit, right? That's one of the chidushim of the Alter Rebbe relative to Purim. Just deny your Yiddishkeit, which now throws it back into the Shom. Right? Just deny your Yiddishkeit and you're safe. Unlike 80 years ago in Europe. 80 years ago in Europe, you deny your Yiddishkeit. What's that got to do with anything? Right? It's completely irrelevant. Right? Okay. So now the Rebbe is going to deal with that. Va'af, and even though shegezeira haisadak ala Yehudim, that even though the gezeira was only on Yehudim, and who's a Yehudi? Someone who's kafir b'aveidah zarah. Right? Now, obviously, there's a genetic aspect to that. There's this thing called Am Yisrael B'Seder. But the gezeira was against the people who were those people, but who were kafir b'aveidah zarah. But imayu kafrim chas v'shalom, and if they would deny the Eibishter and accept the Avodah Zarah of the people, lo yosim lem klum, it wouldn't do anything to them. So then I understand it's more shaykh Torah and mitzvahs than it is to their goof, because there was a way out. This is not still. Kemuva leil sif aleph mitar oretz is brought earlier from the Alter Rebbe. Let's go one more line. We'll finish at the period and we'll pick up tomorrow. Out coffee tomorrow. Mikev and shegezeira az haisaloy al kiyum Torah and mitzvahs ela ala guf. The gezeira wasn't on Torah and mitzvahs. The gezeira was on the guf. It's true, you could save yourself from the gezeira on your guf by denying Torah and mitzvahs, chas v'shalom, which no one did. It's one of the chidushim of the Alter Rebbe, right? No one even had a machshava to do that. Okay, say it. But what was the gezeira? The gezeira was on the guf. Hanukkah, what was the gezeira? The gezeira was on the Torah and mitzvahs. What was the way of implementing the gezeira and Torah and mitzvahs? That if you don't listen to the gezeira, we'll kill you. But there was no gezeira in the guf. There's a gezeira on Torah and mitzvahs in Hanukkah. In Purim, the gezeira was on the guf. There was theoretically a way to avoid the gezeira on your guf by denying Torah and mitzvahs. But the gezeira was shaykh to the Jewish guf, the guf of a Yehudi. That was complete, in a state of complete hefker. Mikeven shegezeira az haisaloy al kiyum Torah and mitzvahs. Hanukkah. El al guf. To kill and destroy. That was the idea. That was the idea of Yamach Shemai in Europe 80 years ago. What's unique about Prague Prague is an amazing city. We learned yesterday one of the unique things about Prague is they keep 2 days Purim. But what's Prague? None of the shuls in Prague were destroyed by the Yamach Shemayim. Why not? Because what did he want? An
exhibit.
What did an exhibit? Prague was going to be the museum that people could come see these artifacts of the people who used to be called the Jews. So he kept it all. Baruch Hashem, it's still there. Still there's all these beautiful shuls, and it's amazing. I mean, the shuls are just beautiful. The rest of the shuls in Europe are mostly destroyed. There is a beautiful shul. I mean, it's much newer. It's not like there's a beautiful, beautiful shul in Frankfurt. You think of all places they destroy it. It's gorgeous, huge shul in Frankfurt. It's still in use. The Lubavitch Yeshiva used to be in that shul for years. The Lubavitch Yeshiva in Frankfurt was there, but now they're somewhere else. I haven't been to the yeshiva since it moved. I was in the yeshiva a number of times, flying through Frankfurt. So if you have a long enough layover, you can get out of the airport, get to the mikveh, and get back to the airport on time because it's very easy to get from one place to another. And the mikveh was in the same building as the Lubavitch Yeshiva, and this gorgeous shul. Why was the shul not destroyed? Because it's surrounded, mamash, right next to a bunch of houses owned by Germans. They didn't want to destroy the houses, so they didn't destroy the shul. Yeshiva works in wondrous ways. In the middle of Frankfurt, Germany, there's this gorgeous shul that the Nazis didn't destroy. Like, gorgeous, absolutely magnificent shul. If you're ever in Frankfurt, go to the shul. It's just magnificent. Like, beautiful. Oh, they built them just so beautiful in those days. So okay. But they destroyed everything. It's heathens. Not Prague. Why? There should be a museum. But ultimately, what was their purpose? Destroy the goof, destroy the people. They kept mitzvahs, they didn't keep mitzvahs. That was irrelevant to the Nazis. It's irrelevant to the people who want to kill us now. Therefore, the goof was in a completely low level of bittul, the Jewish goof. Right? Now, the next thing, we'll see it tomorrow. The Rebbe is going to explain the difference between that and Hanukkah. We've already basically explained it outside by reading these words. Hanukkah, the gezerah was against Torah and mitzvahs, and the goof was that which was used to somehow implement that gezerah. Whereas in Purim, the goof is exactly the other way around. The gezerah was on the goof. If you weren't into Torah and into mitzvahs, so then the gezerah didn't apply to you. But what did the gezerah apply to? The Jewish goof. See how this helps us understand all of this.